Thank you, Donald. Good evening, everybody. Well, 3 explosive devices found at major transport hubs in London this afternoon. More on that over the course of the show. And crime actually rising up the agenda, I think, in terms of our worries about the country we're living in. I mean, last year alone, 285 people died through fatal stabbings in England and Wales, the highest number since records began at the end of World War II. Very often, this gets portrayed, I think, in the media as being a London problem. So often, London stabbings seem to make all the national news. The truth is, actually, this problem, it's happening out there. It's happening everywhere, which led, I think, to the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, David Jameson, writing to his local paper, describing the spate of stabbings as a national emergency. Strong language. Well, here was Theresa May, and bear in mind that, Theresa May was the longest-serving Home Secretary in 150 years. Here was Theresa May talking today about the link between violent crime and police numbers.
If you look at the figures, what you see is that there's no direct correlation between certain crimes and police numbers.
Well, that is a very interesting comment, isn't it? There's absolutely no correlation, she says, between violent crime and police numbers. It's a statement that I find pretty extraordinary. Now, Nick Ferrari this morning on The Breakfast Show on LBC had the Met Police Commissioner Cressida Dick on. This is what she had to say.
But I think what we all agree on is that in the last few years, police officers' numbers have gone down a lot. There's been a lot of cuts in other public services. There's been more demand for policing, and therefore there must be some link. And I have consistently said that
the Prime Minister is wrong. There is a link.
I agree that there is some link between violent crime on the streets, obviously, and police numbers. Of course, there is. And I think everybody would see that.
Well, bizarre, I think, of the Prime Minister to pretend there is no link between police numbers and between the rise in violent crime. I really almost can't believe she said that. Of course, it isn't just about police numbers. A lot of it is about what police officers are doing. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Up to 1,000 police officers in the Met area are dealing with hate crimes. And whilst things that get said about each other can be beastly, horrible, hurtful, nasty, and possibly even at times insightful, I would have thought, given the rise in knife crime stabbings, perhaps we've got our priorities wrong. But let me ask you, when David Jameson, who is, after all, the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, when he asks the Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, for more money, when he says we need more police to deal with the problem, and when he says this is a national emergency, and bear in mind that number, 285 people killed in England and Wales last year through knife crime, would you agree with him? Is this a national emergency? And if you think, no, the Prime Minister is right, there is no direct correlation between the number of officers and violent crime, call 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think Cressida Dick, speaking on LBC today, actually made sense when she said, of course there's some link between the number of officers and crime. Text to 84850. And do you, like me, think that actually what we need are more powers for the police to use emergency stop and search to perhaps attempt to drive some of this scourge off our streets? If that's how you feel, please tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, watch us on Facebook and comment there too. Is this a national emergency, or is that a bit over the top? Well, I guess in total numbers, it's not thousands, it's hundreds, but they're the ones actually killed. What about the numbers that are injured? What about the numbers that are threatened and intimidated? And I must admit, a few weeks ago, I was shopping. I was in the local Waitrose, and I spoke to a couple of youngsters. They recognised me. They wanted a picture. One liked me, one didn't. Hey, that's okay. I can live with that ratio. And I was chatting to them, and they were both 17. I said, what about knives? And they said, well, thing is, Mr. Farage, we feel now on a Saturday night out, we need to carry knives to make sure that we're safe. I mean, that's where we've got to with this. So I'm not pretending that just more police can solve a problem that is deeper, has some strong cultural roots. But is this a national emergency? Well, I would say, to be honest with you, my view is not yet, but we're getting pretty close, it seems to me. Audrey is calling from Southend-on-Sea. Good evening, Audrey.
Hello there, Nigel. Yes, I think it's becoming a national emergency. But I don't think the amount of police is going to make a difference, not now. The difference needs to be in the courts, and it needs to be tougher sentences. You get a slap on the wrist for doing horrendous crimes these days.
So, Audrey, the last figures I heard on this are those that are caught carrying a knife, a dangerous weapon. Only a third of them get any form of custodial sentence whatsoever, and in most cases, they're very short. So, we need tough penalties, Audrey, yeah?
You're carrying a knife, you're carrying it with the intent to do harm.
What about the argument, Audrey, that I heard from those two 17-year-olds in Waitrose that actually they were carrying a knife for their own protection?
It still boils down to the same thing.
Does it?
Their intent would be to do harm if they felt threatened.
Well, but I suppose I could say, being devil's advocate, that you've got a right to defend yourself.
Yes.
Audrey, listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think carrying a knife, for whatever reason, should be punished more than it is. Do you think if those deterrents were put in place, things might improve?
Well, I mean, kids haven't really changed that much over the decades, and the difference was when I was growing up, we had something to fear. Even if it was just the belt round the ear roll, Oh,
Audrey, you say things like that now. I mean, snowflakes listening would need counselling having heard a comment like that. Audrey, I do get what you mean. Deterrence matters. That's Audrey's point. Deterrence matters, and she's right in so many ways that 2/3 of people caught carrying dangerous knives get no custodial sentence and just simply a slap on the wrist. And she thinks we're approaching a national emergency. As I say, I don't think we're there yet. Maybe some of you do. Sad for the victims of gun and knife crime that it's suddenly getting attention. Well, the thing is, T, over the weekend, the two 17-year-olds that were killed both got huge publicity. And one of the arguments made is they got that publicity because they were outside the norm. Let's be clear, most of this crime is black-on-black crime. Most of this crime comes from impoverished areas. And Bernard Hogan-Howe, the former Met Commissioner, he says there is no racial element to this. It is purely about socio-economics. He's probably right about that. But what is true is that most of this crime involves drug gangs. Now, that brings in perhaps, a different element, because Cressida Dick today with Nick Ferrari, said that actually it's middle-class drug users, middle-class cocaine users using that stuff after smart dinner parties that in fact lead to demand for a drug that leads to the gangs. The reason the two 17-year-olds, the one in Manchester, the one in East London, the reason they got so much publicity is they were clearly not members of gangs in any way at all. But hey, they were still victims. Is this a national emergency? Adam is calling from Westminster. Good evening, Adam.
Good evening, sir. Pleasure to speak with you as always.
So, Adam, is it a national emergency, or is that really overstating the scale of the problem?
It's not a national emergency, Nigel. I'll tell you what it is. It's a national disgrace. We're a country of approaching 70 or 75 million people, yet we cower in the face of a few low-life scumbag feral teenagers or early 20s or even younger who want to run around carrying knives and think it's cool to stab people. Well, guess what? It isn't cool. And this government, and in particular, I can't remember a worse statement ever said by a former Prime Minister. I think it was Tony Blair or Tony Buffoon. Tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime.
Well, that was
government. It's soft on crime and soft on the causes.
So, Adam, tell me, when the former Home Secretary, the longest-serving Home Secretary in 150 years, and the woman that is now our Prime Minister, tells us that there is no link whatsoever between police numbers and a rise in violent crime, what would you say, Adam?
I would say, Miss May, you are living in a parallel universe. I don't know which planet you're on, but the reality is the police have become, and this is only my view, but a lot of people will have the same view, the police have become impotent and powerless to deal with this kind of problem. It's not about the police numbers, although I do agree more police is always a good thing if they are targeted and resolved.
Isn't that the point? Yeah.
And what I would do, Nigel, and this is, again, if I was in office and I was running this country, by heck, I would lock these lowlifes up and throw away the key, because that's the only way you'll get to the root of this problem. Like you've just rightly alluded. You're lucky if 1 in 3 people carrying a knife actually get any kind of...
Oh, yes.
It's a joke.
But with respect, Adam, locking people up who are perpetrators doesn't get to the root of the problem. In many ways, there you're dealing with a symptom and not the cause, aren't you?
Nigel, I'm not wishing to fall out with you, sir, because I really enjoy listening to you, but I couldn't care less if you get to the root of them. I'd rather have 1,000 knife-wielding scumbags rotting in prison cells than running around the streets stabbing these poor people. Look at that young girl stabbed.
Adam,
absolute disgrace.
Adam, I get the message. Loud and clear. Thank you. I get from Sarah in Hertfordshire, somebody should ask the Prime Minister if she would have run through that field of wheat if the police were nearby. Of course not. Fewer police mean more crime. And some will remember she was asked what was the biggest sin she'd committed in her life, and she said running through a farmer's field of wheat. And she made it to Prime Minister. Well, I suppose in some ways, at least there's hope for us all. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 6:15 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
Counter-terror police are linking 3 suspicious packages containing explosive devices sent to buildings in London, including Waterloo Station. The head of Scotland Yard has told LBC there is a link between rising levels of knife crime and falling police officer numbers, after the Prime Minister said there was no direct correlation. Toyota and BMW have issued stark warnings about the impact a no-deal Brexit would have on their car plants in the UK. LBC weather: heavy rain spreading across England and Wales, with coastal gales in the south reaching Northern Ireland and Scotland by dawn, a low of 4 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm J-Louise Knight, and an earlier accident on the clockwise M25 has left long delays from London Colney at 22 to the A10 at 25. The A2's queuing out of town towards an accident before Bean. One lane is blocked with delays back past the M25, and it's really struggling out of town on the A127 from the M25 up to an accident at Little Worley Lane. As for the trains, due to a broken rail, South Eastern are warning of 45-minute delays from Cannon Street to London Bridge. Some services may be diverted via Victoria or Blackfriars instead.
This is LBC.
Tom, take a seat. You must be exhausted after your train journey.
It's okay. Let's do this standing.
Do you want to plug in your laptop?
No, I'm at 100%.
And the presentation, I'll get you the Wi-Fi code to download it.
Already downloaded.
Well, it pays to be prepared. Let's get cracking, Tom.
Actually, there is one thing before we start.
Anything you need, Tom.
My name's Chris.
Right.
With free Wi-Fi, extra seats and more power sockets on every train, you'll always arrive ready for business with Great Western Railway. Terms and conditions apply.
I have never seen the point of paying loads for a trendy coffee when I could just make myself a big mug of instant. And I won't buy fancy bottled water when I've got a perfectly good tap. So why? Why would I want to pay more on my broadband for bundles of stuff I'll never use or loads of extras I don't need? When between us, I'm really all about the funny cat videos. Brilliant.
Just
give me great value broadband.
Office. Post office. Here for your broadband.
Buying workshop delights and travelling to meetings off-site. The client wants lobster for tea, and then there's a conference across the sea. Fancy client biscuits, last-minute train tickets, light bulbs, booking flights, meeting snacks, black cabs. You do the maths. Say hello to Soldo. All expenses paid. Prepaid business expense cards for you and your team, so no one has to spend their own money at work. And Soldo connects seamlessly with Xero. A win-win for you and your business. Find out more at soldo.com.
A good cup of tea can fix everything. Well, possibly not your broken boiler, but Trusted Trader are always on hand to help. TrustedTrader.com have lots of really lovely tradespeople who are vetted, reviewed and reliable, so you'll have your pick of a great bunch. Simply pop the kettle on and head online to find a professional in their trade, including that heating engineer. See? A cup of tea does fix everything.
Okay, listen up. Mr. Intel?
Ladies and gentlemen, I introduced the Vonage Business Phone System. You can make and receive calls on your laptop or smartphone using one business landline number.
One number on all your devices?
Yes, all of them. Never miss a call again and always look professional. Anywhere, anytime.
Okay, let's do this.
Make Vonage part of your entourage. A business-ready phone system from just £9 a month. To find out more, go to vonage.co.uk. Terms apply.
Vonage. Sounds like good business to me.
It's Flavour of the Alps week at Lidl, so we've partnered with Jet2 City Breaks to give you the chance to win a city break for two to Salzburg. So your shopping trip might go from this to this. Lidl. Big on quality, little on price. See lidl.co.uk/jet2holidays for details. T's and C's apply.
Everyone knows that the best deals don't hang around for long, so don't miss Jemka Toyota's 19-plate event on now. For a limited time only, enjoy up to 10% off the list price on selected new Toyotas. 0% finance now on key models. And be one of the first to test drive the all-new Corolla and all-new RAV4. The clock is ticking, so head straight to your nearest Jemka Toyota centre today, with branches in Bromley, Croydon, Sidcup, Edgware, Enfield, Bracknell and Reading. Terms and conditions apply.
So much confusion. This deal or that deal. Why can't renewals be simple? It does sound like a bargain. What if you're being ripped off? Confused.com guaranteed to beat your renewal quote, helping you rise above the clamour of comparison sites. It's that easy. Beat your renewal quote guarantee, or you'll get the difference in an extra £20. Don't be confused. Be confused.com. Full T's and C's online. Single annual policies only.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag #FarageOnLBC.
Disturbingly, 3 explosive packages, IEDs I think they're being called, have arrived at destinations in London today, all at travel hubs. And I'm going to Waterloo Station to speak to Matthew Thompson's LBC's reporter on the scene. Matthew, good evening. Matthew, good evening.
Hello, Nigel. Can you hear me?
I can. So tell me.
Apologies, a little bit of signal problem.
That's all right, boy. So 3 packages. Was it one to Heathrow?
Yes, 3 packages, suspect packages, all seemingly identical and all being linked by police cautiously at this stage. One delivered to a building within the grounds of Heathrow, another delivered to the post room here at Waterloo Station, and then a third one delivered to a building near City Airport. Now, in the last few moments, a little bit of breaking news, Nigel, that the Irish police have said that they are now involved in this investigation because it appears that each of the 3 packages had Irish stamps on them. Now, obviously, we can't speculate exactly what that means, but it does mean that this has now become an international investigation and we potentially have a destination from where these packages were sent. Police have said that they were all viable explosive devices in each of these packages. They were A4-sized white envelopes containing a yellow jiffy bag in each of them, and each of them were assessed by specialist officers to be small improvised explosive devices. Now, one of them was opened, the one that was near Heathrow today, and it doesn't appear to have been capable of major explosion, Nigel. It seems to be what police are describing as igniting an initially small fire. So I don't think we're dealing with sophisticated devices, more rudimentary, but nonetheless viable explosive devices. Only one of them was opened, that one at Heathrow. The one at Waterloo was discovered in the post room. It wasn't opened. No one was evacuated. It didn't lead to a great deal of disruption to trains or anything like that, but police obviously not taking any chances. They cordoned off a large area around Waterloo Station. The third package discovered just after midday. That was in a building near City Airport, as I say. It did cause a little bit of disruption. It wasn't opened. Again, it wasn't opened. No one was hurt. Police did arrive. They made the device safe, but it did cause a couple of hours disruption to DLR services, and police saying simply at this stage that all transport hubs across London should remain vigilant and report any suspicious packages to police. No arrests yet made, of course, inquiries ongoing, but that extra development now in the last few minutes, the Irish police are involved in this as well.
Yes. Matthew, thank you. That was Matthew Thompson's LBC's reporter at Waterloo Station. 3 explosive devices at 3 transport hubs in London today. Not considered to be hugely serious, but still, I would suggest, a little bit disturbing. Now, this argument, Theresa May's argument that the reduction in police has had no impact on the rise in violent crime, clearly utter rubbish in my view. You go on to Cressida Dick, the boss of the Met, who says, of course, there is a link. David Jameson, the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, says there's a national emergency. Very interesting. Let's listen to Nazar Afzal, the former Chief Prosecutor for the North West of England.
all the research tells you the more likely you are to carry a knife, the more likely it is that you'll be harmed by a knife. So there's no way on earth that I would encourage anybody to carry a knife. What we have to do is understand where are the youth services, where are the support services, where are children's services, where's the education system, where are the police, where is every other agency, where's the leadership across civic leadership and across national leadership, treating this as the emergency that you just mentioned. We would have had a COBRA meeting for any other emergency. We don't have anything like that for something that's impacting on so many of our families today.
So interesting, isn't it? There you have the former Chief Prosecutor from the northwest of England, and he's agreeing very much with the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner. He's saying this is an emergency, and he actually went on to rubbish Theresa May, really in the most strongest terms possible, by saying if her argument was right, why bother to have any police at all? And I think there is a point to that. Theresa May, long-serving Home Secretary, I think bears some responsibility for all of this. I really, genuinely do. I'm going to Exeter to speak to Rudy. Good evening, Rudy.
Hi, Nigel. Nice to speak to you again.
Good to speak to you again. And so do we have a national emergency, Rudy, or is that over the top?
No, it's not over the top. It's got to the extent, Nigel, now, because I go to London quite a lot. Mm-hmm. I actually bought a body camera the same as what the police use for my own protection, because it's got that bad. I don't feel safe travelling anymore. But also on the same token...
And where are you worried, Rudy? Are you worried on the train from Exeter? Are you worried on the London Underground? What is the part of this that worries you?
Well, the thing is this, when you start seeing trouble happening in Soho and Mayfair, and Oxford Street, which are major touristy places, you get to the extent, well, if it's happening there, nowhere is safe. And at least if I've got that, then I've got some chance, if something happens to me, of them catching the perpetrators that did it,
So are these perpetrators, Rudy, are they boozed up, are they drugged up, or are they part of gangs? I mean, how do you see the source of this?
Well, listen, I used to have a security company many years ago. In fact, people say, what does a thief look like? No one knows what they look like. No one knows what somebody who stabs looks like. That's why it makes it more scary, because they can just be ordinary people in a crowd that blend in. You don't know who they are, It's that bad, And what I find also from the other aspect that annoys me is that we are so short of police, but like, for instance... you must have saw on Twitter about a week ago, you had two officers arresting a preacher in the street that was doing absolutely nothing wrong, and they're wasting police time on stuff like that when we've got so much more important stuff to deal with,
Yeah, I think, the prioritisation of police is clearly very important. So, Rudy, in your view, is it a national emergency?
100%. Because
OK, thank you, Rudy. I'm going to move on. On Twitter, I get, just throwing money at the problem or more police officers won't fix it. Hire more officers and have them patrol areas in which they're known, because they'll be trusted by the community, says Chris. Well, Chris, the whole point about old-fashioned Bobby on the beat was that they picked up intelligence, and it was through that intelligence that they actually managed to stop crime from happening in the first place. That was the argument for being a Bobby on the beat. My late grandfather, I'm certain, would have approved of that argument. Nigel, if a terrorist runs around stabbing people, the police would shoot them. What's the difference, says Tony? Well, trouble is, Tony, the police don't get to the scene until after it's happened, and in many cases until after the person who's been stabbed dies. Zero tolerance is needed. 10 years for carrying, 25 years for any attack, mass stop and search with swift sentencing and imprisonment. Mark, I am with you in many ways on that. I do think there has to be deterrence, and what's the reason we've stopped stop and search? What's the reason we've scaled it back? Well, because, and this is particularly true of London, and I think the West Midlands too, that so many of these areas where this is happening are areas with big black populations, and the police don't want to be seen stopping disproportionately black people for fear of being racist and for fear of worsening community relations. But there's an irony here. Far from stop and search in those areas victimising black people, recognise, and I could read out the list of names of those killed last year in London, for example. The vast majority came from the ethnic communities. Stop and search would not victimise the ethnic communities. It would save lives in the ethnic communities. And I really believe that. And if you disagree with that strongly, if you think I'm wrong about that, if you think stop and search actually would lead, and there was an argument back in 1981 that it was that, or the sus laws as they were known, that led to the Brixton riots, if you think I'm way off beam, then call 0345 6060 973. I don't think it's helpful for the police to look at this in terms of whether people are black or white. This is about people being innocent people being stabbed and killed, and we've got to get a grip of this. We've got to start doing something about it. Chris on text says to me, extra police are fine, but it'll be months before they can be trained. What about putting the army out on the streets? But where, Chris? Where are you going to put them? Because actually this problem is happening in every one of our major cities, and in fact, the evidence I've seen, it's spreading out to our market towns too. You can't put the army everywhere, well, not given the size of it now. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 6:30 and time for the news with Lisa Aziz.
It's been confirmed Irish police are assisting Met counter-terror officers tonight with the investigation into the small explosive devices sent to 3 transport hubs in London. The packages capable of causing small fires arrived in Hounslow, Newham and Waterloo Station earlier. The family of one of the teenagers stabbed to death at the weekend is calling for tougher sentences for knife crime. 17-year-old Jodie Chesney was attacked in a park in East London on Friday night. The head of Scotland Yard has told LBC there is a link between rising levels of knife crime and falling officer numbers, after the Prime Minister said there was no direct correlation. 2 major car manufacturers are warning what a no-deal Brexit would mean for their plants in the UK. BMW says it would consider moving production of the Mini out of the country from Oxfordshire, while Toyota warns no agreement would make it extremely complicated to build new models here. LBC weather, heavy rain spreading across England and Wales with coastal gales in the south reaching Northern Ireland and also southern Scotland by dawn, a low of 4 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, LBC.
Met Police Commissioner Cressida Dick. Is it fair to say, Commissioner, that some of these middle-class dinner parties that send out for cocaine on the weekend or whenever it might be, they've actually got blood on their hands?
I think anybody who is seeking recreational, in inverted commas, drugs, particularly Class A drugs, yes, I think that is a good way to put it.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, weekday mornings from 7.
With Xero, get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
The real reason Sleeping Beauty fell asleep was because it was taking so long for the palace to sell, and the handsome prince needed the proceeds to buy their new home with no time to dwell.
I know who can help. Property Rescue. I'll contact them straight away.
So he spoke to their friendly team who took care of every detail. They bought the palace direct with no legal fees to pay. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
Do you run a growing business that specialises in professional cuddling workshops? Or perhaps you're running a cat day spa that offers herbal pore reflexology? Or maybe you're a retailer with 4 barns worth of healing crystals? No matter what your growing business is, at Barclaycard we take all card payments seriously. In-store or online, we have a payment solution for you. And we'll even give you a £250 statement credit. T's and C's and exclusions apply. New customers only. Offer ends 31st of March 2019. Search Barclaycard Business. Barclaycard. Start today.
If you're a frequent traveller in premium, business and first class, is your travel agent charging you too much? Switching to Bright Sun Travel's 24/7 tailor-made travel services means you could pay less on flights and hotels and enjoy free benefits like early and late checkout, room upgrades and hotel credits. Conditions apply. Visit brightsun.co.uk. Atoll protected.
46 years ago, Swale Heating was born. We've installed thousands of boilers, and now the process is even easier. There's no need for a household survey. Just go to swaleheating.com. Answer a few questions, we'll recommend the best boiler, then install it at a time to suit you. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Have you had an operation that has left you with persistent pain around the healed scar? You may feel this pain as burning, aching, shooting, throbbing, or stabbing. At St Pancras Clinical Research, we're looking at a new potential treatment for this pain, which we apply topically. The study will take place in London, and if you volunteer, you'll be paid for your time and reasonable expenses. Find out more at stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. That's stpancrasclinicalresearch.com.
Sky Sports F1 is the home of live and exclusive F1, and there's never been a better time to join. For just £10 extra a month, watch every practice, qualifying and race live and in stunning HD.
Oh, that was magic, man.
Just £10 extra a month, an incredible price guaranteed for 2 years.
Oh, this is amazing.
Our best ever offer ends April 1st. Search Sky Sports F1. Sky Entertainment, £22 a month, required with new 18-month contract. Set up fee up to £20. Further terms apply.
The high-quality kitchen you've dreamed of at a price well within your budget. That's Room Sense.
That's Room Sense.
This month, all kitchens are half price with a free oven hob and extractor. Book your free home design visit today at roomsense.co.uk.
Quality at a price you can afford. That's Room Sense.
Offer ends soon. Minimum spend applies.
When it comes...
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
The rise of violent crime, and in particular knife crime, is becoming a bigger and bigger issue in this country. 285 people killed in England and Wales last year through knives alone, and we're headed back towards that number this year. People shocked over the weekend when 2 young 17-year-olds were stabbed to death. Both of them appeared to have nothing to do with gang culture whatsoever. In other news, well, the Attorney-General, Geoffrey Cox, and the Brexit Secretary, Stephen Barclay, are in Brussels today. Eddie Mayer bet me a fiver I couldn't go through the hour without mentioning Brexit. Well, there we are. I have done it. We don't know where they've got to today with their negotiations with Mr Barnier, but of course, they're trying to get big concessions on the backstop so that next week Theresa May can get her deal through Parliament. They're not going to get, there's no question about it, they're not going to get, the backstop binned. They're not going to get any really big legal change, but they're really, it seems, arguing about how a disputes panel would operate. But not much news has leaked out of Brussels. In other news, Chucker and his chums, otherwise known as the Independent Group, well, a gang of them today, former Labour MPs Chucker Amuna, Gavin Shuker and Coffey Chris Leslie, were joined with former Tory MP Heidi Allen, and guess where they were? They were at the headquarters of the Electoral Commission. They've decided they want to become a fully fledged political party so they can put themselves on the ballot paper for the next election. Now, the next general election is not due till 2022, but of course if Brexit was to get delayed and Article 50 get extended, there may well be elections to the European Parliament on May the 23rd. And Chuck Aruna said, we're going to be launching a change politics project. So that's really fresh and exciting. What it means is that when people vote in a referendum to do something, they set up a new party to make sure that it can't actually happen. Well, good luck with that, Chucker, because in my view, you are going to need it. Back to this question. Is the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, David Jameson, is he right when he says we have a national emergency, or is that just a bit over the top? Michael is a new caller from Gerrards Cross. Good evening, Michael.
Evening, Nigel. Nigel, I've been a frontline paramedic for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And I used to run Spifffield Ambulance Station, which is the only one in the city, for 7 of that. And you're bang on the money. When you turn around and say, that knife crime in London predominantly is a problem within the black community. Last year we had 134 young black men murdered on the streets of London.
Yep.
And the guys charged with those offences were 100 young black men. So in my head, I don't think we have a problem with knife crime in London. What we have a problem with is young black men killing young black men. And I ask myself a question constantly: why do young black men feel empowered to take direct action when young white kids, young Asian kids don't?
I tell you what, Michael. Let's have a quick listen. You've raised a very, and it's a point I've been raising, and I often get shouted at for daring to say it, but we need to talk frankly and openly about it. But Cressida Dick talked about this with Nick Ferrari this morning. Have a listen, Michael.
there is a much higher involvement in gang activity, and it's not just the police that would say this, children's services would say it, sadly, from boys of African and Caribbean origin than others.
And
why? There is a real issue about people growing up in an area where they are exposed to influences of their older brothers, their uncles, their whoever, and not, of course, exclusively African Caribbean, but in that area, an awful lot of people who are involved in crime or have been involved in crime and are encouraging others to get involved in crime.
Well, Michael, all I can say to that, and I don't know whether you agree with me, but at last we've got a Met Police Commissioner breaking out of political correctness and telling us the truth.
Nigel, we don't have a problem with a 60-year-old man having a penknife in his pocket. We don't have a problem with a 45-year-old nurse on her way to work who's got a Swiss Army knife in her handbag.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is within the black community. If we disregarded all of the murders in London last year that did not involve people of colour, we would be in single figures.
Michael, you've been on the front lines of this. You're a paramedic, and I have to say I admire what you do. I couldn't even possibly dream of doing it. But you've been out there for 20 years watching social change across London and just on the edge of London. What is the one reason this is happening within that community that you could put your finger on?
Society over my time has become more and more violent across the board, really. So if we go back 20 years, and I said every A&E accident and emergency department would have to have a 24-hour security detail, you would have thought I was mad. But that is commonplace now. We're talking about having security officers in schools. So society is becoming more violent.
So is this a breakdown of respect? What is it, Michael? What's going on?
My two pence really is kind of, 22nd of June 1948, Windrush arrived. 10 years later, those people who came to rebuild a nation after the Second World War, who put their shoulder to the wheel and did all the jobs that nobody else wanted to do. 1958, they're married and they're starting to have their children. By the 70s, their children are in secondary school. But in the 60s, the 50s, 60s, 70s, it was a very racist country for those people.
Yeah.
So we've had a generation now that have been told, if you want something, don't ask anyone for it. Go out there and take it. If you want something, you have to fight for it. Now, they didn't say go out there and murder each other, but the message that those people gave their children is not the one that has been received. The message that's been received is if you want something, fight for it. If you want something,
I don't know.
Take it.
I don't know, Michael. I just don't know whether that's right or not. What I do know is there are some particular problems within the black community about lack of male role models, and that many people living in black areas are amongst the poorest. Michael, listen, great call, interesting ideas. Not sure I agree with them, but interesting ideas. Jean on Facebook says, the government have cut the police by 20,000. No wonder the country's in a mess. And Theresa May said that isn't the reason. But Theresa May's very good at making arguments that often seem to be terribly wrong. Now, Tony in Hampshire says, if several hundred deaths are considered a national emergency, what on earth are several thousand deaths each year on the roads? Purely on numbers, better to put resources into road crime. Well, hang on a second, Tony. Go back a few decades, 7,000 people a year were dying on the roads. Now it's fewer than 2,000, and you can never, ever completely eliminate risk when you've got moving vehicles, and I'm sure we'll see this even if we go for driverless cars. Build more prisons. Caught with a knife, minimum 5-year sentence. Murder someone, clear-cut case, minimum sentence 25 years. Sorted. Get tough, TC. Well, yeah. And Jamie in Haybridge goes further. He says, well, what we need is a police force, not a police service. Agreed. Maybe a national force that deploys to troubled areas with their own judges and prisons. Gosh, that's sounding all a bit centralised and worrying. And then Jamie in Haybridge says, then give them instant justice. Now, look, whenever I hear about instant justice or summary justice, it seems to me that as soon as you move down that route, Jamie, you move away from the very principle of what justice is supposed to be. I'm all for tough sentences, but not summary justice. Stuart is a first-time caller from Kiel in Germany. Good evening, Stuart.
Good evening, Nigel.
So, are we? I mean, I'm sure it's not as bad in Germany. I'm absolutely sure it's not. But are we in this country headed towards a national emergency?
I find I grew up just outside Glasgow, and I remember as a child, I'm now 67, I remember as a child we had respect from the police. And unfortunately, when I come over to Great Britain and I'm over regular, that respect is now missing. I think the police should have more backup. I just wonder if Theresa May didn't have a police escort and our security people, how she would feel if it wasn't a problem having less police and cutting them back by 20,000.
Well, yeah, I mean, she is the Prime Minister, Stuart, so she's always going to have security. I mean, you live in a relatively industrial part of Germany, a fairly built-up part of Germany. Do you see similar social problems there or not?
Not so as what you have in Britain. I would say Germany is roughly about 20, 25 years behind Britain. Of course, it's going in that direction, but it is certainly behind Great Britain.
And you're 67. You grew up in Glasgow in the 50s and 60s. I mean, that was pretty rough, though, wasn't it?
It was rough, yeah. But you fought with your fists and not with a knife.
Okay. Well, there is a. I'm not sure I'm going to approve of either approach on air, but I do get the point you make. So, Stuart, why, in your view, and did you respect the police in Glasgow growing up, or did you fear the police?
No, I didn't fear them. I respected them. If you got up to no good, you did tend to get quite a substantial kick up the bum.
Yes.
And you certainly didn't go home and tell your parents because you would have received another one.
But, Stuart, that today would be considered child abuse.
Yeah, but I feel that's wrong. I feel that is wrong.
Okay.
Because the parents should have a certain responsibility as well, and it seems to be the parents are not taking that responsibility. So,
would you? So, Stuart, let me just ask you: would you approve of the police being able to kick people up the bum or clip them round the ear?
Of course.
Okay.
It never didn't do me any harm.
All right. Okay, Stuart. Thank you. Interested to get any feedback on what Stuart said. 0345 6060 973. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 6:46 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Raziz.
Irish police are assisting Met counter-terror officers tonight with the investigation into the small explosive devices sent to 3 transport hubs in London. The head of Scotland Yard has told LBC there is a link between rising levels of knife crime and falling police officer numbers after the Prime Minister said there was no direct correlation. Toyota and BMW have issued stark warnings about the impact a no-deal Brexit would have on their car plants in the UK. LBC weather: heavy rain spreading across England and Wales with coastal gales expected in the south, reaching Northern Ireland and Scotland overnight, a low of 4 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Jay Louise Knight, and it's slow out of town on the M3 towards a car that's broken down just after Bagshot at Junction 3. One lane is closed. Long delays out of town on the A2 this evening from Dartford Heath to an accident before Bean, where one lane is closed. And there are queues out of town on the A127 towards an accident at Little Worley Lane. Those delays start at the M25. There's a serious accident in Ivor Heath. It shut Uxbridge Road, the A412, both ways at 5 points. And on the trains, due to a broken rail, Southeastern have 45-minute delays from Cannon Street to London Bridge. Some services may be diverted to Victoria or Blackfriars instead.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
The Conservative Party has suspended 14 members over allegations of Islamophobia. How widespread a problem is this? And at 8, we'll be joined by Dame Louise Casey.
Ian Dale on LBC.
Word in the woods is that 3 little pigs are looking to sell their homes quick. They seem to be in a spot of bother with the big bad wolf called Rick.
Come out, little piggies!
So they spoke to the friendly team at Property Rescue, who can offer a guaranteed sale in as little as 48 hours at a fair price and a cash advance if you need one. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
Stylish and effortlessly cool, this model is a real head-turner. With 16-inch alloys and a wireless keycard, a new Renault Clio from Renault Retail Group is this season's must-have accessory. And at just £159 a month and £159 deposit on 0% APR finance, the price tag is pretty eye-catching too. Find your nearest dealer at renaultretail.co.uk. Deposit 159, then 48 monthly payments of 159. Final payment 4511.
Life is full of so many things. Happy things, sad things, and surprising things. You've got commuting things, typing things, planning things. With all these things, it's easy to forget you need to eat something. So open the Uber Eats app to order a sushi thing, a burger thing, or perhaps that new thing. Sit for a minute and enjoy that thing, and then get back to all your other things. Uber Eats. Get food delivered wherever life takes you. Download the app today. Available at selected times in selected locations.
The world's longest wedding dress had a train that stretched for 5 miles. Pity the poor page boys. For a frock, that's big. But it's not Euro Millions big. This Tuesday, it's a colossal £42 million jackpot. Euro Millions, amazing starts here.
Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Thanks to people giving monthly donations, Cancer Research UK are funding thousands of life-saving research projects. So people like Alim can get back to enjoying family bike rides, birthdays, and games of football. As a dad, I understand just how precious those moments are. So, on behalf of all the families that have been helped, thank you. See the impact of monthly donations by searching Cancer Research UK because of you. Together, we will beat cancer.
You up to date? I ain't talking fashion trends, sunshine. I'm talking about the latest software and app updates. Here's the thing. Hackers love it when you don't install them. They can use weaknesses in outdated software to attack your device. And if your identity gets nicked, any Tom, Dick or Harry can pretend to be you. So watch your back out there and keep your software and apps up to date. All right? Be cyber aware. Learn more at cyberaware.gov.uk.
Let's go through the numbers. Yes, with the Vonage Business Phone System, you can make unlimited calls to UK landlines, UK mobiles, and even international numbers, all for one low price.
Unlimited calls. Amazing.
Shall we?
Okay, let's do this.
Make Vonage part of your entourage. A business-ready phone system with unlimited call plans from £12 a month. To find out more, go to vonage.co.uk. Unlimited calling applies to standard UK landline numbers. Terms apply.
Vonage. Sounds like good business to me.
Buying workshop delights and travelling to meetings off-site. The client wants lobster for tea, and then there's a conference across the sea. Fancy client biscuits, last-minute train tickets, light bulbs, booking flights, meeting snacks, black cabs. You do the maths. Say hello to Soldo. All expenses paid. Prepaid business expense cards for you and your team, so no one has to spend their own money at work. And Soldo connects seamlessly with Xero. A win-win for you and your business. Find out more at soldo.com.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
A rise in violent crime, knife crime. We haven't even started to talk tonight about gun crime, but that's on the increase in many British cities too. Some, like the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner David Jimmerson, says it's a national emergency. Theresa May says there's no connection between cutting 20,000 police and a rise in violent crime. Very interesting tweet out from Robert Peston from ITV in the last quarter of an hour or so, which says, when the Home Secretary Sajid Javid told Cabinet he wants to change stop and search guidance to give the police more freedom to look for knives, there was a slight testiness from the Prime Minister, according to a minister, and Peston would not make that stuff up. Theresa May was the Home Secretary. Maybe she bears a fair responsibility. Michael in Durham says, why are so many people upset about stop and search? Let's be honest, hundreds of thousands of people get stopped and searched every single day at British airports. Difference is, they're not carrying a knife or drugs or gun. For goodness sake, change the law, do it quickly. Anyone that kills with a knife gets 60 years and not a single day off. And Pauline from North London raises, I think, a very important point. Where are the parents? If we do not acknowledge the role that neglectful and absent parents play in their children's bad behaviour, we can't begin to solve the problem. But Pauline, the point I was making, that we do have some communities in which the number of male role models is worryingly, alarmingly low. Connell is a new caller from Belfast, and I'm told you're 15 years old, Connell. Is that right?
Yes, Nigel, it is, and I'm a huge fan of yours.
Well, that's very sweet of you. Now, tell me, Belfast, of course, has had horrendous violence over the last 40 years, but some argued that apart from terrorism, there wasn't much crime on the streets of Belfast, but that now there isn't terrorism, there is violent crime on the streets of Belfast, but of a different kind.
Yeah, well, Nigel, I don't think it's as serious now, because in Belfast the police are armed, whereas in London and other cities they aren't.
That's a very good point. Do they have tasers, Connell?
Yes, they carry guns as well.
Yeah,
so
I'm all in favour. I'm all in favour of every police officer in Britain having a taser, at least a taser.
Yeah.
But
yes,
do you,
and the exact same, Nigel. Sorry.
But do you see a growth in knife crime over there or not?
Not that I'm aware of, Nigel. I don't really think it's as serious. I think it would just be like gangs, like vandalising stuff, and also attacking people, like throwing things. It doesn't really seem to be knives.
Okay, so do you, but do you so Belfast? I mean, maybe you feel slightly insulated then from what's happening in the rest of the United Kingdom. But what would you say? I mean, you've just made an argument that says armed police on the streets in Belfast. There isn't much violent crime. So does Mrs May, our esteemed Prime Minister Connell, who's negotiated this wonderful Brexit deal too? Was she negligent as Home Secretary?
Absolutely. The way she removed stop and search, as far as I'm aware of. Now, if we had stop and search, that would mean that the probability of people being caught with knives would be higher, which would mean that the people would be less likely to carry them in the first place. Now, what I would do, Nigel, is I would put the punishments up for anyone carrying a knife. I would double it. So this would mean if you're more likely to be caught and your punishment's more severe, then you wouldn't do it in the first place.
And what if, Connell, and let me just ask you this finally, what if, under stop and search, a disproportionate number of black people were stopped and searched? Would that worry you?
Yes, it would, because it would maybe make people more against the system, but I think it would be necessary. Now, I'd rather more people caught with knives and more people living than someone being offended.
Yeah.
Now, it would be what the leaders need to do, is they need to stand up for the people. While people are being murdered, I'd much rather someone be alive and offended than someone being dead and unoffended, Nigel.
No, you put that beautifully. And in London and the West Midlands, the vast majority of knife crime victims are black themselves. So, in fact, stop and search would save black lives. Connell, great call, great passion, very interesting. Alex is a new caller from Bristol. Good evening, Alex.
Hi, good evening.
So, do we have a national emergency, Alex?
Sorry, I just felt compelled to call because I had some comments about what's happening in the black community. So a very quick introduction to myself. I'm a young black man. I'm 28 years old. I grew up in inner city London. I've been surrounded by people with weapons, may or may not have carried a weapon myself, but I've since left that lifestyle. I've gone to university. I've got myself a degree. I've had 4 jobs since 2014, and I'm now a section manager in a sort of one of the largest automotive companies in the world.
Good.
So I feel like I've progressed out of it. But what upsets me, having seen life from both worlds in terms of sort of lower class black community and maybe middle class, where the predominant people that I see are white British, what upsets me is that people tend to put a trend against race and ignore social class. I feel like social class is a much bigger contributing factor towards knife crime
Alex,
than the colour of someone's skin.
Alex, Bernard Hogan-Howe, the former Met Commissioner, when he was asked this question, he said, actually, it's social class and socio-economic class that is the main factor. But Alex, do you take my point that the vast majority of knife crime victims in Birmingham and London are black, and that if the police use stop and search in those areas, more black lives would be saved?
I don't deny the fact that there are significant, maybe a disproportionate number of black people represented as either victims of knife crime or offenders. But however, if you look at the statistics, I mean, Afro-Caribbeans are still a minority in England. So if you were to look at the greater prison population, Afro-Caribbeans are a minority in prison. Therefore, the majority of crime are not being committed by Afro-Caribbeans in this country.
No, we're not, Alex. We're not saying that. We're saying that the drugs and the gang problems happen in the poorest parts of London and Birmingham. They happen to be the areas with the biggest black population.
Correct. Right. So And so regarding stop and search, yes, I think it's an effective short-term countermeasure. I think if we want to address things long-term, if we want to really get to a corrective action, we need to get to the root cause of the problem, and no one wants to go there because it involves looking at history and how Afro-Caribbeans, the journey of Afro-Caribbeans have taken from the Windrush to today. And if you do know the history, I'm sure you will come to agree with me that there is no coincidence that black people are involved in knife crime and gun crime and drug crime and gang violence.
Well, Alex, I could talk to you for hours. I can't attempt to rewrite the whole of history, but I thank you for your call and your frankness, and do call again on this subject. This was the Nigel Farage Show. I'm back tomorrow at 6. At 10 tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick, but now it's Ian Dale.